hill, the boys are hitting some serious remains. They found a huge wall with metre-deep foundations. This means the building would have had 2 stories.
Hope he's getting near the bottom then.
And out of these foundations comes pottery that means we can date our oven. And they're about to put a spanner in the works of our bakery theory.
The wall we took out was 1680. This wall's much earlier. Now, from the finds we're getting, we're pretty certain that this wall is the wall of the building that contained that oven. These are all,
I see.
These features are all contemporary. The only problem we're getting is that all the pottery we've got, and we're getting quite a bit, seems to stop before 1550. If this was John Knight's bakehouse, we'd be expecting to get late 16th, early 17th century pottery. We haven't got any of that, not one single scrap of it, and it is quite common stuff.
Yeah, is that surprising that there isn't
That's
any?
quite surprising.
So Paul's pottery tells us this can't be John Knight's puritanical cake shop. But the trench also tells us that it met a violent end.
If you look at the stones round this pit, they're all really reddened, and the inner wall is really reddened. This place burnt down.
Ah.
Yeah, that's why nearly all the internal structures are all really heavily burnt. So this place is burnt down.
I mean, a bakehouse has an oven. Is it quite common that it would burn?
Very common. I mean, you find this with late medieval big houses and even into the early post-medieval period. Things like bakehouses and cookhouses were always separate structures and usually stone because they went up all the time. Because if your kitchen catches fire, you don't want the rest of your house taken out as well. So this definitely seems to have burnt down in quite a major fire.
So we have a huge 2-story building with an oven in it that burnt down in a massive fire. This is a genuine mystery.
We know John Knight was a baker. We know he made his money baking. We've got a big bakehouse, but it seems to be earlier than John Knight. So there should be.
So we'd love it to be John Knight's bakery, but it appears not to be.
We can't say it is. It's just, it appears it's at least 20 years too early from the associated finds we're getting with it. So.
If this isn't John Knight's oven, what could it be?
OK, now let's think about this. We are looking at something older than we originally thought, are we not?
Everyone's assuming the pub was built in 1564. We've got a substantial bakehouse out the back that dates to sometime between 1470 and 1550.
But am I right in thinking that medieval Banbury is almost non-existent, as far as we know?
There's documentary records to stuff happening here in the 14th century, but there's been no real archaeological evidence of it. We've got something really substantial out there.
While Giles gets on with recording the mystery building in the trench, Paul gives me a hand with stage 2 in the creation of our cock ale.
Now, this is the final and special ingredient for an authentic 16th century beverage called cock ale.
Cock ale.
Cock ale, which is actually, because it will eventually contain the protein of this fine male chicken, an aphrodisiac. Okay. And the idea is we poach this in dry sherry for a couple of hours, and then we add it to the ale and drink it and go out on the town. The great thing the recipe predates those horrible Puritans, so this is a bit of a two-fingered gesture towards the parliamentarians and all their killjoy ways. You don't look convinced, Paul.
I'm just looking at my head around the concept of a beer with a chicken floating in it, sorry.
Chicken will not be floating in it when it's finished, but its essences, its juices will be sort of filtered out into a sort of broth.
OK.
What do you normally use as an aphrodisiac, Paul, as a matter of interest?
12 pints of Guinness.
12 pints of Guinness and a magazine. Sorry? I can't tell Paul that. No, stop it. No, sorry. No. Just shut it.
You said you wouldn't say anything.
Guess what we could do, Paul? Caption competition.
Fantastic. I can think of about 12 already.
Right into pub dig. 10 hours later, after the final feather has been plucked, our cock is ready.
I'll tell you what, can you tie a knot?
I can do that.
Next week we were doing lemon cheesecake.
Very, very different from cock ale.
Yeah, I don't think it's all right. It's not going to escape.
It might.
All right, off to the kitchen then. As the digging continues, I'm back in the pub kitchen, putting the finishing touches to the cock ale.
I didn't think archaeology could be like this. A bit more sherry, I think. A bit more sherry. You can overdo the sherry, so just a dash. This will be a poke in the eye for those Puritans. Good luck, boy.
While I've had the pinny on, the boys have been working away under Paul's watchful eye. Finally, he has the evidence that he needs to identify the building.
It's a big piece of horn.
Now, you only tend to get horns in one of two contexts.
You're just waiting for me to say something, aren't you?
The thought never crossed my mind. You either get them at tanneries, because the hides come in with the horns,
Sure.
they cut them off, throw them away. We obviously haven't got a tannery. The other thing is carcass processing, meat, butchery.
So?
First bits you chop off are the bits with no meat, which is the jaw bones, the horns, and the skulls. We're getting quite a few of those.
Right.
We're getting some nice, big, chunky meat-bearing bones as well. Some of them have got really substantial cleaver hacks out the top of them, so it looks like there's been large-scale butchery going on here. I'm pretty certain it's a kitchen.
Not something. Yeah, it's not something you associate particularly with bread making.
No, indeed. Hacked about animal bone. One of the things we've also got, and I mean, find of the week for me, is this.
Find of the week. Don't tell me this is a. It's a bone or wood. It's bone.
Bone, yeah.
It's a handle of a knife or something.
It's something like that. It's certainly a handle, probably off a knife, and it's a big one. That's not a sort of dainty knife for cutting your dinner up. That's for chopping your way through substantial lumps of meat. I mean, it could be a handle off something else. It could be a sharpening steel or a big spoon or something. A big ladle. I mean, we're not talking.
Right. Okay.
That's not dining. That's again
a kitchen utensil.
Exactly. Exactly. So. I'm pretty certain now that this is an exterior stone kitchen for a big house.
Big posh kitchen for a big posh house.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that just leaves one big question. Where's the house?
This archaeology is a strange business. Things change very quickly. For example, our substantial, finely worked, posh building turned out to be an oven. And now it seems it's something completely different. But whatever it is, one thing is for sure. We have a major discovery on our hands.
Coming up, we get to the bottom of the mysterious building behind the reindeer and indulge ourselves in a very non-puritanical drink.
Cock punch with nutmeg.
Pub Dig is in Banbury, searching for the remains of the medieval city that was destroyed by the worst urban warfare of the Civil War. And amazingly, under the humble Reindeer Inn, we seem to have found the remains of a pre-Civil War building. What will it tell us about the Banbury that became the killing ground of our worst internal conflict?
This was a really big building. Maybe not big width-wise, but really quite high. I've seen drawings of the kitchens, the medieval kitchens outside great houses, and some of these things had ceilings 15, 20 foot high. As a kitchen block goes, this is a big, grand kitchen block.
Yeah. And what's most amazing for me is it's in Banbury, which is notorious for lack of archaeology.
Allegedly.
So this kitchen block served a large number of people in a fine house in the 1400s. But where is the house? And who would have lived there? Our buildings expert, Richard K. Morris, hasn't been idle. He's been examining the reindeer and has discovered something no one has noticed before.
So, Richard, you've had a poke around inside, and what do you think of the reindeer?
It's just screaming at, I'm a bit posh. So that's
posh. All right.
Possibly...
High status, to be quite
High status, you know, come in, it's the pub kind of thing. But it's when you get inside, you can see what an important building this is.
The front gate dates the building to around 1570, but Richard has seen something that dates it much, much earlier.
We are in the corner of a medieval roof here. We've got a windbrace here, holding that purlin above your head, which watch out for your head. Yeah. Above that purlin, there's another slot for another windbrace. Now, this is probably late 15th century.
Really? That is before John Knight had this place, isn't it?
It is. And if you go next door at this level, you can prove that.
It seems that Richard has turned up a house hidden inside our pub.
We are on the outside of that building.
On the outside of that building.
Standing in midair.
In midair. There's that close studding.
Wow.
We're above the passageway, and that timber frame is on that front.
So this is the 1570 bit.
Yeah.
So that predates it.
Yeah, because you've got the truss of this 1570 bit here, which just goes against that close studding.
Are we talking about a very, very significant building in the history of Banbury?
I think we are, because it's very short of medieval buildings.
I don't think there are any.
Exactly.
So are we talking about the first one?
I believe so.
we've actually rewritten the history of Banbury.
Well, there you go.
Let's go and tell Paul.
That'll really cheese him off, won't
Yeah,
it?
actually, probably won't. He'll probably pretend to be indifferent, right? Because we haven't got any pottery with us, so how can we date it without a sherd of broken pot?
Maybe the house that was served by our massive kitchen has been in plain view all this while. Is the Reindeer itself the last standing medieval building from pre-Civil War Banbury?
We have been up in the attic together.
I've heard rumours, actually.
And goff ye not, we have come down with a discovery which will change the history of Banbury.
Really?
Yeah. Richard, tell him.
We have found that this half of the pub over there
Yeah.
is actually the only medieval building in Banbury.
It's medieval.
It's medieval.
The pub has been basically built around an existing medieval structure.
Yeah.
There aren't any other standing medieval buildings in Banbury because of the
Apparently
fire.
not. Apparently not. The fire,
Wow.
Civil War.
How come no one's noticed this before then?
I don't know.
Okay.
From the outside, it doesn't look spectacular. Let's face it. It looks very Georgian or 18th century from the outside.
Right.
But when you go up in the roof space, you can see the wind-braced roof, and the close studding in the frame, which I know you're glazing over.
He's doing it again.
I think the thing is, Paul, I mean, no one's been digging around in pubs, which is why it hasn't been noticed before. But along comes Pub Dig, and what do?
We find stuff.
We dig around in pubs.
Yeah, it is fantastic. I mean, combine that with the stuff that's coming up in the trenches, and we've got quite a story to put together.
The medieval building hiding inside our pub would have been built 100 years before the Knight family converted it into a bakery. But who would have been living here? The answer lies in the finds that have been coming out of the ground. A knife handle and a collection of bones tell Paul exactly what was going on.
We've got, I think, this really posh house, probably a merchant's house, something like that, on the street frontage, and then we've got this really nice stone kitchen block behind it. And I mean, this is catering for a household and staff.
Right.
This isn't catering for a couple of people and a few children.
The town with no archaeology is
Yes.
rammed with fantastic finds.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
amazing.
My favourite find of the week, by a long way, is beautiful late medieval bone knife handle.
Star. Top of the leaderboard.
Absolutely. What I think's happened with that is that that's actually broken during use, and you can almost see from where it landed in that pit that the cooks turned around and sort of thrown it in the pit in disgust and gone off to get
And
another
cooks were
knife.
bad-tempered egomaniacs, even in those days.
Our angry chef would have been preparing feasts in his giant oven for one of the merchant families of 15th century Banbury. These were the very class of people that later took to Puritanism most enthusiastically. So it turns out the Reindeer's been a hotspot for killjoy troublemakers for centuries. In the street outside the pub, there's some intriguing evidence that the prudishness started early. Today it's called Parsons Street, but before that, it was called something very rude indeed.
Now, why was it called that?
Well, just about every single medieval town of any size had one. They were a kind of either the red light district or the lovers' lane.
Was it a taste thing that made it change? Because Parsons Street is very, very, very genteel, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
And
yeah.
religious.
Yeah.
Whereas there's a taste for saying that Grope isn't.
Well, quite.
So what was the sort of motivation behind changing the name?
I mean, it could be early Puritanism. If you look at what we're digging up, it's a very big,
That's true.
posh
Yeah,
townhouse.
yeah.
I mean, we know it was occupied 1470, 1500. From what we're getting at, it was built sometime in the 15th century. That's all we
Yeah.
can say. So it may have been an attempt to make this into a more thriving middle-class
It's
street.
the sort of thing
you know?
the estate agents would say, can we change the name of this street? We're finding it difficult to sell houses on Grope Lane.
So, the roots of the Civil War stretch back a long way in Banbury, and a lot of them seem to be entangled with this pub. Our dig here has uncovered the medieval town that was assumed lost forever. Not a bad result for two beer-fueled blokes and a team of enthusiastic helpers. But however excited we are, our discoveries won't mean a thing without county archaeologist Richard Orham's official stamp of approval. So what does he make of them?
You know, Banbury is a substantial medieval town, and here we have the evidence that it was, and the archaeology survives here.